So, Josie, can you tell me what kind of complaints about bias and fairness Politifact receives?
Yes, so a lot of our complaints can be categorized into sort of three different areas, and they're sort of similar. The complaint is PolitiFact only fact checks the right, and it's complicated. And we constantly are fact checking both Democrats and Republicans. Until now, and in many cases where we have state partners, there were more GOP politicians than Democrats in charge. Before the 2018 midterms, there was a Republican House and Senate, and of course, President Donald Trump, a Republican in the House, in the White House. So, of course, we have the president himself and the people he's installed in the administration. This is shifted. Another complaint we get is PolitiFact is funded by special interests, and about half our revenue comes from selling content to publishing partners, which includes TV stations, other news organizations, and Facebook. A lot of grants and donations are just 15%. Advertising makes up the rest of our revenue. So we have a Who Pays for PolitiFact page on our website. Another complaint we get is you have a left-wing agenda, and our only PolitiFact's only agenda is to publish the truth so you can be an informed participant in democracy. And our critics take many forms. So they're furiously typing out emails and Facebook inbox messages to send to us privately. They're engaging with strangers in our Facebook comments. They're tagging their acquaintances and friends in our Twitter and Instagram posts. So there's a lot to manage, and I often call upon the staff to keep an ear to the ground when there's a particular lack of trust being conveyed in the comment section or replies of their recently published check. We do have some staunch reader defenders of our work, and just this morning, someone said, "Can you change your name to Politispin?" And John responded, "Explain how this is spin." And these are just sort of a citizen, someone who follows us. Someone said, "You guys are such frauds." And the same man said, "What is inaccurate about their analysis?"
Oh, that's
So,
great. How can you, so you've kind of broken down what the complaints are. How has PolitiFact gone about kind of explaining how you work to be fair and that kind of the accusation of bias? How do you kind of counter respond to that?
right. So our fact checking process is tried and true, and we've been doing the same approach to fact checking since 2007, when we won the Pulitzer Prize. But readers don't know that, and they don't really care about our prize. And what they want to know is what we're all about and why we're fact checking. So our approach to talking about our work is we will not get credit for our fact checking process if we don't talk about it. So we talk about our process various ways. And how we work to be fair. So we often do sort of editorials, particularly the editor-in-chief, Angie Holing, will write an editorial about PolitiFact's approach to polling and PolitiFact's approach to our fact-checking both sides. We talk about our process a lot in our newsletters, and we'll give readers the heads up, this is how we plan to track the promises of President Biden. These are our plans to cover the State of the Union. This is, down the road, we'll be fact checking the 2022 Senate races. And we bring up reader questions and criticism in the newsletter and also in those sort of columns. In addition, we also talk about our process and we talk about how we're fair in our PolitiFact FAQ videos. So we have published videos on how we select claims to check, how we live fact check debates, and what our agenda, an often used reader word and a rarely used journalism word, is to arm citizens with. So our agenda is to arm citizens with the tools they need to be informed in a democracy. So the final thing I'll say is we do some Reddit AMAs, and we want to do like a Twitch stream down the road that's just like a live Q&A about our process. And then I also have written up a bunch of bite-sized items in a Google Doc about our process, like how we determine ratings and how we use on-the-record sources, where we get our funding. And I can apply those particular bite-sized things into comment sections from the brand where readers are attacking our credibility. And I try not to be too defensive about the tone of the response, but why would the average person know how we select claims to check? So when I'm going about this reader discussion, compassion is key, and I don't want to assume anything about how average people understand journalism and our craft.
Yeah, I think you and your team do a great job of having a variety of ways to respond to the comments and or the questions and or criticism, especially the bite-sized comments, kind of breaking those longer explanations down to then be ready to share. So when you've been sharing these and kind of after you share it, after someone maybe has a criticism, what has the response been like? Do you feel like you're kind of making progress when you are trying to be transparent about your agenda? Again, a word that we don't really use, or how you work to be fair.
We have received a positive response. I think qualitatively, we've seen readers be empowered with the knowledge of our process to engage with one another in talking about our fact checks. We also have some quantitative knowledge of how readers respond to trust language in Politifact work in our content. So in spring of 2019, we conducted an experiment with our newsletter readers. And one group of people received weekly for 6 months this trust language about our funding, about how we choose claims to fact check, about everything about PolitiFact. So they received that information once per week for 6 months. And then there was a control group of the newsletter experiment who didn't receive that. And at the end of the 6 months, we found that those that received the trust language about PolitiFact's ethics and our mission and our process, they were surveyed and they were more trusting in PolitiFact's work. And those that didn't receive the trust language were not as trusting in our work. In addition, those that received the trust language for the 6 months were also more likely to donate and to donate higher amounts of money to PolitiFact. So that was sort of an example of how trust language really encouraged readers to not only get involved and understand our process, but to fund it.
That's great. And could you talk a little bit about how you've made the decision to figure out like what to explain? So how has the team thought, okay, this is something that we should write about. This is something that we should create a video about so people have a better understanding of how we do our work.
Yes, I mean, ultimately, we're listening to our readers and we're listening to our critics. I mean, about if, especially if we're seeing a bunch of replies to a Twitter thread that's like, "Why did you fact check this person?" Like that was what we would be seeing a lot, and often it would be like sort of a secondary official on an issue, but so that would be a reason we need to do a video and about how we choose claims to check, how we can't fact check opinions, but we can fact check specific numbers or explanations that are, qualifying basically. Um, that's how we found out ways to talk about our process and um, just sort of the basic tenets of incorporating transparency into just talking about our editorial process in general, about how we'll automatically answer questions like why we chose this story or fact check, why we found this source credible, what we don't know. I think that those also lead our decisions around our trust strategies.